Here are some episodes from the novel 2. As for a description of my friend, his height has always been approximate, even more so now that it has stopped fluctuating. Remember that when he sits down, his height has a tendency to fold up. His weight is supported by gravity, and until it stands on its own merit, it would be a scientific understatement to burden fact with figure. For his skin coloring, the rainbow has nothing to fear by way of rivalry. His hair is well placed. His laughter is a combination of open smile with sound effect. It is rarely ever contagious. Neither his thoughts nor his soul are visible and must be assumed. His identity is no secret, but anthropologists haven't given up yet. His name describes him only superficially and is somewhat dated by now. By repeating a given act, he is soon converted to habit. Yet the weather is far more predictable. His behavior blends virtue with vice, and yet betrays neither. Morality could hardly survive on his example alone. His private life is open, and his public life is closed, while he lives somewhere between, not so much lost as simply not found. He obeys all the rules of psychology in both act and feeling, since he knows how useless it is to refute science. He comes from natural ancestors, and now only nature remains. Death in no way scares him unless applied to himself. He practices survival daily until it flows regularly through his circulation. To be official, he prays. In the politics of religion, he stands forth unanimously on a God ballot. As vice deity, he sweeps himself into power, which he mismanages grossly. Slightly to the left of human, he indulges chaos until all principles collapse. In this next episode, my friend and I have some dialogues. I said to my friend, "The moon shines," and he, not to be outdone, reminded me that the sun is so hot that it burns the hours away. "So that's what happened to them," I replied, since I remembered many hours which were not with me anymore. And so we both held up the same smile, as though it were a valise containing stubs of matinee and evening performances in the theater of life. Later on, holding another conversation with the same friend, I told him what a simple pleasure it was to marvel at the absent sea. I expected him to ask, "What absent sea?" Since he didn't, and with a dry throat, I asked permission to fetch a bottle. He generously took out 2 glasses, and after refilling, we reflected that the bottle was empty. "Is that the absent sea?" he asked. "Yes," I answered, while a wail lunged about in my stomach. Our next conversation, like a stained glass window, reflected guilty religion. We gossiped about angels, like boys who talk about movie actors. "Ever seen an angel?" he asked, his voice purring with simple faith. "Not since I was one," I answered, which stunned us into incredible silence. Once the silence was removed, like an unruly drunk from a dignified tavern, we traded words, like an Oriental Indian trading ivory tusks to an American Indian in exchange for a $24 elevator ride across the Brooklyn Bridge. Feeling better, we relieved ourselves by eating. Then, while he went to the bathroom, I sat back and succeeded deliciously in not thinking. He returned, though, to interrupt my non-train of thought. Angry, I called him a name that reflected poorly on his mother. He agreed with me. As we were shaking hands, though, winter turned into spring, and spring bloomed into very summer. We decided to close the window. But nature never slowed down. It ran around in dizzy circles, chasing the leaves up and down the tree. The clock, feeling pulse and rhythm, stirred in its wicked blood. The panic beat in my breast like a storm. Our last conversation in this series, of course, summed up everything. In the broadest general terms, we spread philosophy like a carpet or rug across the living room floor of the world or life. Anything in our way, we swept under the rug, using a bold broom with sweeping authority. At last we both concluded that we knew even less than Plato. This flattered our concept of ignorance, but made our knowledge feel inferior. For compromise, we turned on a television set. It was a book program. The words were big. We could read them across the screen, and when we reached the bottom of the page, the announcer's hand turned to the next one. It fascinated us. Little by little, our ignorance was getting drunk. After the end of the book, the announcer explained the plot. He was a nice man. His voice was gentle for its size. It was lovely. We soon fell asleep. What my friend dreamed, I don't know. My dream was about his dream. Lacking information, and frankly respecting his privacy, I had to make my dream blank, just like the void before the world began. In another hour I expect to wake up. I am comfortable. I love to have no pain. The sun burns up another hour. I feel myself exploding. I wake up like a drunk fish and roar into the bathroom. Then I go back, and my friend is not dead. Realizing this, I watch him wake up. Covering me with his eye, he yawns a hole so wide that horses and men and all other creatures rush through. When the storm subsides, a peaceful serenity sails through the room. "Are you awake?" I ask. "No," he replies, waiting for my smile to reach its peak. Let him wait. This next episode is about my friend who can't stop laughing. My friend was laughing one day, and precisely because nothing was funny. He exhausted his laughter. He took a glass of water, sighed, hiccuped, and grew a grim face. Indeed, he had been laughing for 34 minutes straight, certainly a record. During that period, he had not interrupted himself once, just straight, continuous laughter without inflection, steady as death and just as humorless. This was an ordeal. He needed a long rest. But just then, a lot of funny things happened. As illustration, a man tripped on a banana peel and wound up eating it. Item: a lady crossed the street, having forgotten to take along her legs. They were standing on the sidewalk all by themselves. Powerless to run after them, she had to meticulously avoid traffic. But when she got back at the risk of her life, the legs disowned her. Thus faced with a disastrous loss of sex appeal, she stumps about like a politician. Anyway, funny things like this were happening, and right in front of my friend's eyes, too. For example, an airplane collapsed in midair, right near a handy cloud. So the pilot jumped onto it and was transformed on the spot to a heavy white angel, in clear view of the fire department below, whose impotent hoses belched hellfire and snarled up city traffic. A latter attempt was made to rescue the pilot, since the cloud was low. But the would-be rescuer gained access to religion while halfway up, and nothing mortal was ever heard of him again. That's a well-populated cloud. But if it should rain, the inhabitants are in the Lord's hands. Imagine how the passers-by laughed. An orchestra of cackles, giggles, side-splitting, and all other instruments of laughter, including a deep belly bass bassoon, was in full effect, until people's ears were dancing all over their faces. Corpses strewed the street, their intestines twisted into convolutions of laughter. It was a sheer hilarious occasion. But my friend was deadpan, with a poker face so motionless that it would have been unmoved even by a calamitous explosion of incredible atomic strength performed an inch away. "You lack a sense of humor," I told him. "It's bankrupt," he said, in a dry, feeble voice. In this next episode, my friend is feeling very lonely. My friend kept having a lonely feeling, so I introduced him to thousands of people, millions and billions of people, even people who were dead or weren't yet born, because I didn't want to discriminate. And now my friend was enjoying all sorts of social lives, at parties, gatherings, dates, conferences, stray meetings, ceremonies, dedications, get-togethers, clubs, observances, parades, wakes, weddings, births, processions, houses of worship, houses of ill and good fame, accidental encounters, chance reacquaintances, anniversaries, appointments, interviews, celebrations, and other loosely defined gregarious occasions that kept him well occupied with people. I could barely see him because people were always in the way. His loneliness seemed outnumbered. It went into hiding and rendered only token guerrilla resistance from its isolated underground movement. In this next episode, my friend is poor because he has no money. My friend was out of money. He applied to the bank. "Do we have your name on file?" a teller asked him. "No," my friend truthfully replied. "Then go away, especially if you're a bank robber," he was told. My friend wished he had money. The wish became wealthy, but my friend remained poor. "Have you money to share with me?" he had the nerve to ask me. "No, I have only private money, and it's not transferable," I said. "But I have a real need," he reminded me. "Desperate, urgent." I gave him all the sympathy I had on hand, and the promise of more should it ever run out. This rekindled his faith in human nature. His heart warmed over twice, frying itself sentimental. He shook my hand, and the sparks very nearly burned me. "I would kiss you," he said, "but you're not a woman." Blushingly, I agreed. Next time I saw him, he looked hungry. "Man can't live on sentiment alone," I remarked, with my well-fed cheerfulness. "No," he said, overhearing me. The no had no weight behind it. It came out of a hollow container, part of a general overall emptiness to which his physical plight had reduced him. "I'm in reduced circumstances, as you can tell," he described himself. I decided to flatter him. How true. Next time, he announced his death. "So soon?" I gasped. "Not already?" His skull smiled, ironic but gentle. "That's unforgivable," I said, morally outraged. "Can I advance you $1?" "No," he sadly declined. "I'm not supposed to take it with me." "Go on," I implored. "No one will know." So he stuck it between his ribs, and right away it began to earn interest. "I'm leaving on a sour commercial note," he announced, hiding his soul in shame. "Get on with you," I prodded, giving him a good-natured dig. "Yipe," he yelled from the poke in the ribs. Deftly I had removed the $1 and left him the interest with my good wishes. He died poor, vowing to come back. "With what?" I shouted after him. He couldn't even pay for his passport. Space took all his remains. The customs officials confiscated his poverty, and now he's a freeloader, living off the fat of the land, floating, a drifter, an entertainment figure who's looking for an angel to back him. "Your head is in the clouds, you dreamer," I yelled up. He ignored that taunt, snubbed his non-nose, and enjoyed the extreme luxury of death, like a king but belatedly crowned. In this next episode, my friend makes a confession that he was once in love. "Ever in love?" I mentioned to my friend. Then when his smile stopped hurting, his answer hung on his voice before his tone came into certain evidence. "Funny you should ask, but I was just dreaming the same thing myself." While the subject was being changed, a drop from his drenched private heart assured me of his tears. All the while, a terrible dryness guarded his eyes, like the hasty Holland thumb that saves a nation from its dike. If I touch him, I thought, his past might turn inside out, and a woman step down from her image into fact. So I increased our distance, like a dancer walking backward off the cliff, until our friendship was out of sight in the intervening silence of a year. Tapped without warning on the back, I turned full scale around and saw the wholesome remembrance of my friend. "What were you doing all year?" I uttered to my surprise. Equally taken aback, he spread his shoulders in a grumbling way, leaving his hands outstretched to demonstrate a point. His face wore his expression without much confidence, but meanwhile health peeped out from his body, like the muscles independent of their athlete. "You're fit, you're in shape," I articulated, as though indifference had just given birth to an admiration. After a quite automatic thank you, he shaped a pleasant smile on his mouth, keeping it there as long as psychology required. When the smile had worn out its comfort, the face was pulled in by a sag, while the eyes evened out in their sockets and searched for breath. About love, he reminded me. I thought about it every day. The emotion was gone a long time, but the thought remained like the tree in winter. My mind outlined her, but the body had no more juice in it, and she was blank in the face, like a doll without eyes. I thought this quite remarkable. Here he was confessing. I encouraged it. When I lost her, he went on, it was like I didn't know where to look for myself, and even the mirror was hiding the secret. Of course, she didn't exist, or I mean, she turned over her existence to my feelings and then dropped out of sight so that her absence could feed my feelings fat and dizzy. But then when my feelings disappeared, only my thought was left. Since my thought didn't have any more meat on it, now I'm beginning to forget. I felt like taking notes, but the speech was over. He trembled a little as he spoke, which gave his words some smack or authority. His sincerity made me nervous, but at the same time I was grateful. It saved me from reading a novel. It was the real thing, only slightly less literary. After I thanked him, we walked on together. Before the hostility had grown too marked, we gave each other a hasty goodbye, while he retreated into memory and I staggered into fact. In this next episode, my friend tries to make a book. My friend tried to make a book. It was hard to write it, so he did the bookbinding first, an attractive hard cover and some empty pages blankly pregnant. The printer was getting impatient with a squad of idle typesetters. But my friend had no inspiration. That was the trouble. Prose to him meant perfection, and anything less, according to his ideals, was imperfection. So he never wrote. The book got published, a few thousand copies, and the critics, that polite crew, blamed the style for the failure, but said nothing of the empty content. The current philosophical system, however, praised the content and included some passages in an anthology, the title of which is The Vacuum in Modern Man, Studies of Our Negative Times, by authors addicted to the disease of which they treat. I'm getting famous, said my friend, and before he could elaborate, a terrific yawn dislocated his jaw. Ouch, he said, exerting his rugged realism. There's material for your book, I warned him, your personal experience. Why bore the reading public, he answered, while the sheer monotony of living drove a brutal ennui through the blank pages of his average paperback soul. My friend was so ordinary that the jaw snapped itself together again, because normality was ingrained in its bony habit. In this next episode, my friend woke up one morning, and here's what happened to him. He tells it himself. I woke up feeling too good to be true. That was my first mistake. I yawned, and with powerful ease of breath, blew the ceiling away, until the lady upstairs fell on me with enormous curiosity of desire. We married next day to facilitate our growing friendship. It was a marriage of convenience, since she was intolerably wealthy and I was sufficiently poor. She made me move upstairs. We cooked our meals by rubbing our bodies together while holding the raw meat and vegetables. It was amazingly effective. Animal heat, as yet unexploited, contains unlimited possibilities as a source of energy. We thought of selling ourselves to the government, but that would be prostitution. This story ends, however, sadly. We loved each other to extinction. Even our graves are invisible. Speaking of graves, this next episode deals a little bit with the atom bomb. "Are you scared of the atom bomb?" I asked my friend. "I can always duck," he replied, swaying his head off his flexible neck in illustration. We like to put all idle theory to the proof, so we waited for a factual plane to appear. Finally we saw one, miles high in a lazy blur off the top of the sky, but it went out of our vision without dropping an atom bomb. "We're at peace, that's why," said my friend, protecting his courage, despite the serene safety that assailed us. True to summer, every tree was green. The next episode follows the same theme. A little boy kicked a large rubber ball. It was really a globe of the world. I could see the continents painted orange against the blue surface of the ball. "Be careful of the world," I cautioned. My friend joined us. "The world can take care of itself," he boasted, stepping on the ball. It exploded. "That was my crystal ball," he said, and rushed to phone a reporter. The little boy bawled. "Don't worry, I'll get you another world," I promised. The park filled with the chorus of its green trees. In this next episode, my friend and I discuss war, whether it's useful. "Do you believe in war?" I asked my friend. "Yes, but only for destructive purposes." "And in the validity of peace also?" I re-asked him. "Oh yes," he assured me. "Peace has its uses as well. During a peacetime emergency, hostility must be strictly rationed, and vast measures of friendly idleness imposed upon the public patrons. It requires a Spartan regime of discipline. War relaxes these tensions," I suggested. "Yes, war is a back-to-nature movement," he asserted, "an instinctive, almost Freudian reaction against our synthetic peace treaties and artificial ceasefires." "Should peace be outlawed?" I wondered out loud. "Not permanently," he modified. "The human race needs an occasional uninterrupted weekend of self-repopulation, a legacy to future stockpiles yet uncreated. Moderation," he concluded, "is our wisest laissez-faire restriction on war. After all, death can be carried too far. After that happens, it turns against us and destroys us all. Like fire and big business, it should be regulated within reason. Don't get me wrong," he added in defense of his savage virility. "As a self-sworn rear-guard liberal, I am devoted to the charming simplicities of war, its triumph of sheer outlet, in addition to the prudish refinements and feminine virtues that peace contributes to our well-rounded study of the total picture of man." Then war is a man and peace is a woman, I pondered, hoping to vary this life and death matter with some spice. Yes, but the man is usually on top, my friend boasted, and the woman can only respond with passive resistance. Some women wage aggressive peace, I contradicted. Yes, but that's a sin against nature, he replied, and illustrates our degeneracy. I like my war and peace straight. And you'll get it that way, too, I added, for the air whistled with diplomatic failure, teasing the potent nuclear atom to cock its world-devouring phallus. A final orgasm threatened creation. In this next episode, the sky fails to appear, and here's how my friend reacts. One day, the sky failed to appear. My friend looked at his watch. While he looked, he waited in order to give himself something to do, like a bird that, while flying, is also flapping its wings from a busy Protestant purpose to keep high above the sinful plane of simple idleness. The weather and climate were outdoors, as nature had planned it, but the sky was remaining behind the scenes, like a bashful boxer who's trying to win the championship outside the ring because he hates to be confined, especially with ropes on four sides and a clumsy interfering referee who pushes him and his opponent apart by style-cramping their punches with sport-defying rules and other sleeping pills, merely to promote fair play. Without a sky, there was no sun. My friend removed his sunglasses and took out his fair-weather eyes with their self-regulating system of tears that ran down from clouds of emotion that were always being saved for a rainy day and prepared with a constant umbrella, held open like a palm extending from the arms of a beggar. When will the sky come? My friend's question-filled mind happened to be thinking. So that was neither day nor night, nor the slightest degree in between. Without a sky, my friend said, I might as well be dead. That's a negative way of seeing things, I corrected him, and praised the earth and sea, pointing out that they, at least, remained. But I want the whole picture, my friend insisted, like a lover who, after finishing his woman, kills her for good measure, and then complains that she's no longer active. Just then, like the central tenor who holds up a whole opera for vanity-suspending hours in order to set a dramatic stage, and then thrills the patron-soaked audience with the belated triumph of his appearance, the sky took place. How complete, admired my friend, and his gratitude sprinkled the area with some high-purpose clouds, mingled throughout with the radiant effect of a sun, to give reality its most daily illusion. At last, he said, finishing up the touches, brilliantly imitating what of its own course is so regularly normal. He smiled and estimated after deftly fingering his pulse that both blood and breathing were keeping an inspired rhythm together, now that harmony was restored to the highest wideness of which this world is serenely capable. Fulfillment, he echoed, partaking of the glory. It was idle to deny him. In this next episode, my friend and I have a political argument, and we fight. Feeling anti-logic one day, I went political arguing. Are you of the Republican faith? I asked my friend in my usual first-hand manner. or of the Democratic persuasion? Which? I'm a day-to-day atheist, he retorted, and twice on Sunday. Then your vote is split? Yes, but one on more side than on the other. Gradually it was necessary to fight, each championing the other's right to a viewpoint. I hit him with a free speech uppercut, while he hooked a liberty amendment to my jaw. Then, feigning democracy, I delivered a telling republic blow. Bleeding from the Bill of Rights, he drew me at in-quarters, where we cast a stuffed ballot and went into a brotherhood clinch. The referee, God, fully segregated us, but in an offhand manner knocked me out. He counted the 10 Commandments, which I took lying down, a glassy stare flashing honorable defeat from my conservative and leftist eyes. Still dazed, I saw 50 stars standing for my states of mind. Instead of twinkling, they blurred. This gave me a patriotic unity. In this next episode, I see my friend, literally. When my eyes see, generally color is included. Is this privilege necessary or luxurious? I don't know, but my friend has a pink face. When opened at the front, that pink face breaks out into a multiplied sound of many human words. Through that complex of words, the face behind it remains almost silently pink. This simplifies the problem of seeing, but meanwhile my ears are in utter and confused misery. Stop talking, I tell him. His face is so surprised, it turns white and then red. Silence is golden. Behind the pink border of his face, the background presents a variety of characteristic colors. The famous blue of the sky, the green emblematic of nature, and the man-made colors of his abounding architecture. After my friend dies, his pink face will be blank. Then the sky will move forward, the trees and buildings grow closer, and that former pink face will lose its ability to be seen. By that time, my eyes will be blind anyway. And meanwhile, where will pink go? In this next episode, my friend believes that nature should always be outdoors. So here's what happens. My friend has an outdoors attitude to nature. Once I fooled him. I cut an outdoor flower off its wild natural stem and placed it inside a well-cultivated vase with the head sticking out for air. As another act of mercy, I added iodine to the water, just in case the stem where cut should have any opportunity to bleed. All was in readiness. My friend arrived. He took one look and concluded that the room was a garden. He plugged the lawnmower into the closest socket and shaved the hair off the rug. Then he emptied a bag of seeds into the sink and turned on the water to make them grow. Then he switched on the chandelier bulb and prayed for chlorophyll. Meanwhile, he was not idle. He raked fallen newspaper, shoveled and hoed a patch of wood floor, and even squeezed a refrigerated carton until the daily milk oozed out. When the alarm clock went off, he fed it chicken feed and told it not to crow till morn. No sooner did he do these chores when he went behind a lamp, opened out his back face, squatted in the manner of our most primitive peasant ancestors, and produced personally his own instant fertilizer. But I spoiled his pleasure. "This is an apartment," I told him, watching a shadow steal across his weather-beaten face. "Well, ain't that so now?" he said, looking about him. The window afforded our only compromise. Halfway between indoor and out, it served to remind each world about the other one without excluding either. There, suitably, was the seat of our arbitration. We sat on the sill, his feet dangling out into a rough bush and mine in on the shaven rug. It fell to my lot to clean up dung. For his part, he agreed to forego crops, since most of our needs were well serviced by the grocery store. I had to concede the outdoor supremacy of the sun, while he let electricity lie tame in domestic wires, the sheltered creature shedding light by the hand of science. A flower plucked out of the lap of spring is confirmed in artifice, while the table where its breath declines grew wild into a sky of rain. I sleep warm on a bed, but expect the fury of my death to romp in warm earth. Paste may preserve my teeth and lotion train my hair, but when a skeleton draws free of every civilized label, emptying the wedding ring of a well-fed finger, the stars teach bones a new dance. The rhythm will fall into the window where my friend and I sit bargaining over the division of things. We solve a double image of a world whose beginning rages at mad ends with an incredible middle that can sprout billions of ends to divert nature and defy our practical tricks of science. In this next episode, my friend admits that he's a common man, and when I ask him what is a common man, he describes it. The common man wields majestic power. He sees without eyes and knows without learning. He marries with proud might and sometimes pre-marries. His shoes are older than his feet, and his fingers always overrule the thumb's awkward veto. He need but speak, and language is immediately summoned. His voice booms thunder, while lightning flashes from his brilliant teeth. He votes, he goes to school, he works, he decides. His ancient foe is the world. Under a shady tree, he seeks protection, but rain runs him indoors. Once indoors, he opens his great library, a newspaper, and actually reads real words. His brain practically is self-electrocuted. He solves religion by saying yes, ignores war with no, untroubles himself, and sleeps inside a shell of the most selective dream work. He kisses his wife, he ruins her figure, and little children appear. He gives them names, and he is the center of attraction at his own funeral. But many years before he dies, he's sure to get drunk. His wild heart is full of instant biology. His laughter causes tears to grow. As natural as underarm hair, he acts his sincere role, moves contrary to his shadow, and disappears entirely. His old hag of a wife, a mourning apparition in black, sighs from her sour false teeth, and turns all her vacancy toward the stream of progress. The world is a shallow triumph. Its buildings are crammed with offices, and secretaries type 1,000,000 words for every product that's bought or sold. The world is so old, it cooks up screwy games, and the people are being played. Common men are always born. There are so many of them, we have to smile in self-defense. We smile until our lips fall off, the stomach flops, the eyes search out blindness, and the dark feet reach like roots to the center of the earth. For everyone who falls down, someone springs up. This army has great reserves. The collapsible sky, the Sistine Chapel of creation, drives a shower of air into our daily lungs. I take a breath, and you take a breath. The common man is all nose without fact. Should reality approach, he dives underwater and breathes through his trunks. His imagination is royal. It creates taste in his own image. In one Sunday, he undoes all of creation. He wipes out nature and streamlines progress, lifting his armchair to perch on the nearest convenient star. Though an absolute monarch, he keeps government under democratic control and has spies spying on spies to carefully check up on his own precaution. His right foot is constantly under vigilance from his left foot. He walks both ways at once and sits down on opposite extremes. The closer he is to himself, the blunter becomes his sense of smell, and the duller his critical faculty. When he thinks a thought, the air stops breathing, and the sun is under eclipse. Once the thought is already thought, he gets up and decides to act. He chooses or uses a wife, changes employment, melts crime from his hands with cheap soap, and buys a one-way ticket on the way back. He negligently leaves his footprints everywhere for other fools to trip on behind him. Then he chides them. The next episode shows my friend becoming old and alarmed at the possibility of his own death. My friend has a lifelong guarantee. It begins when he was born and ends whenever now is. This leaves his future up to chance, but his risky life delights him. Feeling like a pirate about to escape from walking the plank, or like a last-minute saved would-be victim of an execution squad whose smoking guns turn from fact to mirage, my friend pinches his mirror where he is convinced his flesh actually grows. One day, a cemetery salesman knocked on his door and wanted to sell him a plot. My friend almost reversed the table by trying to kill the man about business, whose half-choked neck flirted briefly with immortality or damnation on behalf, primarily, of the rest of him. Next day, the cemetery had a fire sale, then closed down for want of recruits. The ghosts were transferred to senior citizen homes, a social come-down for most. They talked in lively tones about old age, the consensus of opinion being that old age was a hazard. The discussion waxed merrily. For reinforcement, marshmallows were served, but not before some practical joker had toasted them almost to a crisp. Elsewhere in the world, life plunged out of 1 billion wombs. Inside my friend, where it hurts, is lodged his skeleton. His most durable feature, it lives for the day when it may make its naked debut. My friend wishes to cover up the scandal, but for all his fancy clothing and well-haired skin, his defense is slipping. A psychoanalyst whose specialty is depth concluded that my friend is repressing his skeleton. But if this personal trauma should ever emerge, my friend could barely survive it. Now we come to the last episode, in which my friend and I are already dead. "Good Lord, how I hate to be dead," my friend's angel announced. "Yes, it's bitter," I agreed. "Do you remember that girl I used to date?" he said. "Oh, yes," I replied, pretending that I did. "Well, I wonder what she's doing now," came that sad tone. "Married, probably," I vagued to estimate. "Children?" "Suppose." The silence deepened. "We had a great deal of fun," my friend ventured forth again. "Most likely you did," and I couldn't hide my boredom. Nothing is so deadly, I thought, as a couple of fellows without their bodies fooling around with the remnants of sensual memory. First of all, it wasn't appropriate. Then, nothing practical in this world or the former could be gained by it. A shallow waste, wasting the breath of eternity. "Forget about her," I advised, though it seemed heartless. "Try to be independent for once. Useless to mourn over spilt life. What are you, a tragedian? Why don't you get down to earth? Down to this place." And I blushed, while the echo of my mistake rang through the dismal vacancy. How harsh! Reality is nowhere appreciated, neither there nor here. Ideals follow us through both worlds, like camp followers to a marching army, the painting tramps, homeless, that beg to be taken in, warmed over, and destroyed with caress. Death has no benefits. It's very disillusioning. She had pretty lips, my friend said, and heartless eyes, and breathtaking breasts, and well-divided legs, and soft golden feelings everywhere, a head full of vanity, and a capacity to absorb my love until unheard-of reserves would be called forth. Love so actual you could touch it, and then forego the use of those fingers that had done the touching. The fingers would be mounted up on the wall and embalmed, enshrined as commemorative trophies of those minute, hour, week, month, years that experience converted into things too real to be snapped up by this sanitary oblivion that bathes and bathes our souls clean through until we're just transparencies for the sun's endless image by which nature undergoes its usual renewal as a service to tardy children who have the good fortune to be ever continually born late. "Why couldn't that happen to us?" I said, and the pang of being cheated by an early birth became a fresh sensation, if these formless thoughts we think in this vaporless atmosphere can ever be confused with living sensations. Ah, life, I moaned. There's really no substitute for it. For a minute, we were quiet. I can make love all over again, boasted my bodiless friend, if only I put on a little weight. Problems, I sneered. Don't come to me with your problems. But secretly, I was wishing the same thing myself. Amazing how similar we've become. That's the trouble with death. No individuality.